Hi, everyone. Good morning, everyone. We'll just wait for a couple of people to come in, Greg. I think we've got, a few hundred to come in. How's your morning been?
Been lovely. Had
I can
a
see that
great
you're doing
start.
November.
Well, actually, this was just in preparation for today. I saw that you recently released a men's health
Mhm.
paper, as I, did my best decorating today to make sure I fit it in with the theme.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. No, and thanks for reminding people that are now joining about the paper. Sure, Mel, we've got a few great SuperFriend peeps in the chat today, and I'm sure there'll be some links getting thrown around as well with the white paper included. But yeah, a really important piece. And I love to see that you're getting behind it. If I could grow a mustache, I would. So
Yeah, it's
don't know
much
if
to
it's
my
suiting
wife's
as much
dismay,
as you
though.
though.
She's not pleased.
Sorry, what'd you say?
As much to my wife's dismay, I can't say she looks forward to November every year. It's yeah, not her preferred way of appearance for me, but hopefully it starts conversations like today. I think that's the most important part when it comes to men's health, particularly.
Exactly. That is awesome. So hopefully I can see we've still got a few people just trickling in. I'll give everyone one more minute before we start. Mm. Sorry, I'm seeing if I can get everyone's chat up and running. Um, I think this should be okay. Okay, let's make a start, everyone. It is recorded, so we can certainly be sending around everything today. But look, I think as we come together today, always wanting to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands which we live and work. I'm actually joining from the Gadigal country and honour the ongoing connection to culture, community, and country. Paying my respects to elders past and present, and acknowledging that sovereignty has never been ceded. So, Greg, as we know, the year is winding down. We were just talking about that, and our stress can naturally rise, can't it? We have this invisible line, I think, in our mind, doesn't we? About December or Christmas, or before we actually finish up and we all break for the year. That we've got these deadlines, and we have to get through our list, and so those deadlines really tighten. We can actually start to see that our energy dips and that real juggle between the work and the personal commitments. It starts to become a little bit more demanding, especially for the working parents, where we've got some the school holidays really start to begin mid December. So we also then see other pressures that can come up from a personal perspective. So you can get end of year reviews, again, project closes out, a lot of kids finishing exams, those kind of pressures as well, with getting to places, from Christmas parties to other, increase, I think, financial commitments that we do see. And then also just sometimes that family pressure of expectations again around Christmas. And it's not always a happy time. So this is just, it can start to really compound and intensify on top of everything else when we're trying to finish well. But when these stresses that can go unrecognized or can be ignored, we know that it starts to begin to compound in certain individuals. We can start to see the anxiety then heighten, and it really start to accelerate those symptoms of burnout, which we're hearing a lot about, and we've heard a lot about over the last couple of years. And really, from that psychological perspective, doesn't it really shows cognitively that it shows up through our mindset and our negative self-talk. I can't keep up. I can't do this. This is too much. I don't know where to begin. Emotionally, that can start to play up on how we're feeling and what we're experiencing, which is at levels of overwhelm, again, increased anxiety or irritability, reduced motivation. We can start to see that procrastination come through even our behavior. But then we really see that shift in energy. So we can see the heightened fatigue, that sense of restlessness, that the piece of connection, and withdrawing from that, and then really that difficulty in being able to create those decisions and regulating our focus. So this is just not an individual thing. It can start to ripple into the teams as well that we work with, and that around collaborating on deadlines, and when engagement then drops and performance becomes harder to sustain, and those relationships can start to come under some strain as well. So it really, this time, it calls for greater awareness, not for us to be on autopilot just to get to that end of the year. How can we get to that year with compassion and also that proactive wellbeing support, both personally and then organisationally, to really help people navigate that pressure and finish the year probably in a better and more sustainable way, that is again, not only from a psychological safety perspective, but rather than feeling like you have to actually go in just to now recover, how can we actually finish the year with that level of energy? We see this a lot in SuperFriend data. So last year, our seasonal data, we can see that 1 in 4 Australian workers really reported that the most stress that they feel and the under pressure was during December. We also then know in the more higher risk industries such as retail and hospitality and transport, that they actually increase, those feelings actually increase for those employees. So today, so delighted to be joined by you, Greg Stark. For those who don't know Greg, founder and director of Better Being. Greg works with leaders and organisations like Coca-Cola, Commonwealth Bank, really to boost wellbeing and performance. Author of an awesome book, Sweat Equity, and definitely a regular contributor to leading health publications. Overall, a great bloke, and an awesome colleague. Known you for years now, Greg, so it's always been a pleasure. But this is a year, we actually had the pleasure of working with you from a research perspective and combining our seasonal data with Better Being's mindset pillar, and really integrating that just to capture what has gone on. And that, I reckon they brought out some great results, didn't they, Greg? So what we actually found, just a quick summary, the high mindset scores strongly correlated with a lower level of psychological distress and lower levels of burnout. We see that the financial distress did reduce the mindset score. We also showed from a generational insight that boomers scored highest in mindset and social connection, where the Gen Y actually ended up scoring the lowest, followed by Gen Z. But also then the higher mindset scores, it did correlate with a greater intent to stay within the organisation and also a lower absenteeism and presenteeism. So love to know a little bit more, Greg, about your wellbeing index, and how that mindset really does play that critical protective factor for individuals and teams.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nat. Again, it's always great to catch up and discuss this. And we're very excited about the recent work we've been doing with you. Really fascinating insights, and hope to have some further insights published in the next few months. But absolutely right. Mindset is a critical protective factor for both individuals and teams. We like to think of it almost as mental fitness. It's something that we can train almost just like our physical fitness. And the key part to that mental fitness, and the first part of that, is always self-awareness. And I think at this time of year, it's always difficult because we've become so busy reacting to everything going on that we don't often take the time to stop and think about, how am I actually going? What's serving me? What's not serving me? What can I start to do as new habits? What do I need to stop doing? What do I need to continue doing? And so our wellbeing index, the purpose of that often is to give that individual time to pause and reflect and think about those behaviors and how well is it serving them and what they can improve on. And as I said, this time of year, those deadlines pile up, like you said, the social pressure, the financial stress, the family dynamics. So when those collide, that fatigue, starts to catch up with us, and our well-being dips. So that's the use of the Wellbeing Index, and we're really excited to share some of those insights.
Yeah, no, thank you. Like it's I'm looking forward to that report coming out in February. So everyone watch this space. But I think our data also then showed that the high mindset was linked to the lower psychological distress and burnout. And we find this in our connectedness domain also, where the connectedness score is a strong predictor of psychological distress. So the higher levels of connectedness an individual has or a team has, it actually has a protective factor against psychological distress. So that anxiety and those depression scores there. Greg, what subtle shifts in mood and cognition or behavior can signal that maybe individuals or teams are really running on that empty? And how can we then recognize those early signs to where connection and support might be dipping, and then to start actually asking for a little bit more?
Yeah, perfect. And again, that's the flip side of how the index is also used from an organizational perspective, how we're using that data as indicators where there might be, red flags or yellow flags down the road from both a psychological and a physical risk type of perspective. And again, if we apply that into the real world setting, not just from a data perspective, what are some of the key signs that we should be looking for when it comes to individual behaviors that we might need to investigate further? So around that mindset pillar, some of the key themes within that mindset pillar is that when people have difficulty in disconnecting from work, they're checking their emails up until the moment before they go to bed, they might be sending late emails or calls, that often that difficulty in disconnecting is a sign that things might be overloaded or problems down the line. As you mentioned as well, we know that when financial stress is high, we're busy, there's lots going on, our ability to prioritize our health becomes more challenging. So looking for those struggles that people might have dropped off from things that they usually do, the food choices might slip, their exercise might slip, they're not getting enough sleep. Often when we feel we can't even spend 15 minutes on our well-being, it's probably an indicator that we need to spend 60 minutes on our well-being to really help us to navigate that chaotic situation. Other things as well, reduced energy and focus. So when we struggle to concentrate on tasks, we know that cognitive bandwidth is limited. We get decision fatigue, which becomes cumulative fatigue as well over the course of the year. So when we see that drop off in ourselves or in others of that energy and focus can be a sign as well. Emotional shifts. So we have questions in there around our ability to communicate how we feel. But if we find ourselves quick to anger or becoming unusually quiet, they can often be signs that things might be off. So a leader or manager saying, "I notice you haven't been yourself lately," can be a great gateway to further conversation there. And the other part, as you've said as well and touched on, that connectedness domain, we know how important social connection is in our health. It's one of it's equivalent to smoking 14 cigarettes a day was some of the research out there recently. And there was an example recently, Clint Stanaway had to step down from his position at Channel 9, citing burnout. But he said, interestingly, one of the first things he noticed in himself was social withdrawal. He wasn't making time to see his mates. And so again, those changes in our individual behavior or in our colleagues is what we're really looking for. Change in behavior and change in circumstance, and then starting a conversation, getting on that front foot, recognizing that early helps to support people before things escalate down the line.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, it's the self-awareness and also the social awareness. And it's interesting, and we talk a lot about, and we've spoken before, from that biological component as well. Like when you start to not being able to make those decisions, you're continually in that loop where your adrenaline is continually then switched on, and that's then having that adrenaline pumping around your body all the time. That is also then going to start to break down and create potential susceptibility to illness. And that that we can start to see that when we always say or feel, once we actually get to that holiday that we'll work so hard for, usually we just kind of crash and burn and more likely to get the colds and the flus. And it's because that adrenaline is continually on. So our body is not meant to actually have those levels of hormones racing around, and also the cortisol level. But even the cortisol, isn't it interesting, around the way we choose to eat? That is, the cortisol can actually give us that opportunity when it's on, that our body just needs those high calorie, high burns to continue to go. So that's why we're more likely to hunt out, I think, the sugary, the high calorie, easy burn foods. So, and that's, I think, just it all plays on that olfactory system as well. So there's these connections that sometimes it doesn't actually, it doesn't help when we don't recognize or stop or pause or breathe, which I know you're going to get into, how they're all then interconnected. So yeah, it's really important, I hope, for the listeners to understand that this is a real mind-body discussion, and both go hand in hand here. But Greg, I really liked how you were mentioning leaders and what leaders can do. But as we also know, and a lot of researchers out there, the leaders, and especially middle management, they can actually have the highest level of burnout. And we can know that there's a number of issues there, and especially around the stigma and the expectation of roles. But it's really important also for leaders to be able to lead by example. So how do you reckon leaders can, and employees can prioritize certain workload and deadlines, to preserve that level of energy, but still being able to maintain that level of connection?
Yeah, great question. And again, we know with leaders, particularly, as you say, that they are often caught in this middle part of dealing with themselves and helping others and helping to hit organizational targets. And obviously, one of the first things is, can we fit our own mask and prioritize our own health and well-being? And like you said, be that example to others on how to get through those times, is always a great place to start. A client of ours recently actually spoke to us that they've refreshed their organizational values across their new executive leadership team. And I really love this, that I thought it would be great to share today. But their values are centered on optimism and shared responsibility. And I think it really captures something that all leaders can probably take from this to maintain that connection and performance. I love optimism because it's not just necessarily being toxic positive, that everything's great, everything's wonderful, but it's about searching out the things that are working well and what's going well for us, what's happening for us, and then that can become the contagion. We know negativity can spread like wildfire through an organization, but if we start to intentionally focus towards that positive and that optimistic side of things, more good comes. And there's some great research, and we'll share some of that later as well. And then the other part, that shared responsibility. Again, I think that this helps individuals not feel like they're victims within a workplace, but also for leaders to not feel like they have to carry everything alone. It's not solely on them. That performance and well-being is both a collective effort, and when it's shared, that energy is protected. That if someone's workload is too high, others can jump in, but we can have that shared responsibility, and that we're in the trenches together, which is really important. And I think the key is, how do we create these things? How do we do these things on a day-to-day type of level? And I think that this is where compassion comes in. I think you mentioned that word early on, and compassion is something that we're really big on, particularly when we work with leaders, because often people think compassion and performance are in opposition to each other. We can't push for performance and be compassionate, but we know that from research, again, that compassion is what builds psychological safety. And that if we have that psychological safety where people can think clearly, speak honestly, solve problems early, put hands up when mistakes are made early rather than leaving it late, that is where performance really starts to come into its own. And so our key tips for leaders is just asking two simple questions as frequently as you can. How are you feeling? How can I help? And again, giving that autonomy back to the individual so that they can create the solution. You don't have to tell them what to do. Sometimes people just want to feel heard or hugged. But sometimes they do want that help and that directive on where they can go. So I think asking people, how are you feeling, and really being present in that, and getting them to think about that. And even if you're being asked that question, try to avoid saying busy or good. Try and think of other ways that you can respond to that question. And then more importantly, how can I own this situation to make it feel better for myself?
That's so good. That's such great recommendations there. And I love the optimism and the way that you've actually painted that to the audience today, and the importance of that contagion theory. Like it's so true. Like it can go either way. But having that level of optimism and bringing it back to highlighting what has been going well, and how have we been doing that, and then how can we actually integrate that. That again is showing that problem solving mindset, and also the narrative. I think it's around that language, that we're not getting into stuck in those, as you said, the trenches, the self-deprecating talk, and the optimism is going to be in enhancing that proactivity, but then placing that next to the shared responsibility is also really important. And I love that you also say that leaders don't have all the answers, but they're not supposed to have all the answers. And especially around well-being, it does start with that psychological safety, so that opportunity to feel safe when you're speaking up, or when there is a mental health challenge, but being able to say, what can I do, how can I help? You're spreading that I suppose that question back to your team or to that individual, about saying we'll come up with the solutions together. And then we're going to be able to also then have a look at how those solutions, fell out, and what are the key takeaways that we can do to then bring that back in to the next challenge that we may have. So that's a really important feedback, I suppose, loop, isn't it? To continually bring and to enhance that shared responsibility. So also love the fact of people not actually being able to say busy or good. What's some other words that they may actually be able to use, just for the people that usually that's their default that are listening today?
Yeah, again, I think it's just even taking that moment to think, how am I really feeling? It's okay to say I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated that, my family are being difficult in organizing Christmas Day. That's a feeling, that's an emotion. There's a reason for that. It's okay to say that. You're not having a whinge, you're just saying that's how it is. But you could be busy, but you could be thriving, or you could be busy and you could be stressed. Which one is it? So am I feeling great? I'm energized. I'm really busy. I'm getting lots done. This feels great. Or I'm busy, but I'm overwhelmed and things are too much. So again, just really thinking about, busy isn't really an emotion, it's an action. So really thinking about what is the emotion that's tied with that. I think there's over 20 something emotions. You could probably explain more in that, but really thinking about different ways you could describe how you're feeling is important.
It is. It's good. It's good. I think that there's a lot of people out there, and potential other wellness by the water coolers who have talked about that affect labeling before, and that importance of that, and being able to understand and expand on your vocab, and how important, how the impact of that even on the brain. And so when we can actually identify the emotion that we might be feeling, not the behavior, but yeah, actually the emotion, how that then it stops the brain from trying to search for it. And so in return, what that ends up doing is it starts to switch our tap off of our adrenaline, and then be able to open back that blood flow to the executive functioning. So that affect labeling is really important. But again, that connects so well with your compassion, because when you've explained to someone, whether it's your leader or your colleague, like how you are feeling, they're then going to understand what your situation is a little bit better. And then the how can I help, it actually just becomes a lot more impactful. Thank you. But let's get on to the work and life. And you did mention these dreaded things, and I can be a bit of a culprit. And I'm pretty sure that there'd be some of my SuperFriend colleagues, or even other colleagues, that might laugh and go, yeah, Nat, you're the perfect person that someone needs to steal that phone at night off you. But it does, like the work and life, it can collide really easily, just the way we work now. And it can really compromise that energy and recovery. So again, we're talking about the self-awareness and the compassion, but what strategies can we actually put some more concrete strategies to create those boundaries, and really protect our energy and stay productive?
Yeah, exactly. Again, I think we know that that work and life is so integrated, and often, when I'm talking with clients, that they might notice a drop off in someone's performance, and once they've done a bit more investigating as to what's happened there, it's often things that are completely outside of work that's really hampering, and it's very hard to just leave your luggage at the door. You know, you've got to bring the whole self to work is something that we're really encouraging people to do in this day and age. So again, it's acknowledging that, recognizing that, and then thinking about those boundaries at an individual level, but also as a leader, how can we create boundaries to help people optimize? And I think probably the one biggest bit of advice we often give is to start to think about managing your energy, not managing your time. And we manage our energy and not our time, and it comes down to protecting our boundaries, and understanding what works for us. I guess a really quick, small example for me, my accountant invited me to their Christmas party the other day. It was lovely of them, but it was going to be a late night, alcohol, a room full of people that I didn't know, that I would have to be networking the room. For me, my urge is that's not something that's energizing me. It's going to really take from me. I'm going to have a bad night's sleep and not be at my best the following day. So rather than say I can't come, I actually replied to them because I really appreciate everything that they've done for me over the last year, and we haven't caught up for a while. So I suggested, why don't we grab a quick coffee, either before Christmas, after Christmas. We don't have that invisible deadline as to when we have to meet up, because I don't want to add to their load either. Make it more meaningful, more intentional, and a far better energy decision. Time-wise, it's probably not going to change too much for me, but in terms of my energy and what helps fuel me and makes me feel better. So again, it's that self-awareness piece that we spoke about at the start, but thinking about that energy aspect. And again, something that leaders can do is, how are you helping others manage their energy and not feeling they're obliged to say yes to everything. We don't have to say no, but find something that might work for us is probably one of the key things around those boundaries.
I can't agree more. I think that is a perfect example of that. You don't have to. There are choices, and it's not about being feeling like you have to feel obliged to go to everything, or if we've got that FOMO mentality, just also to be careful about that as well. But providing alternatives. So if something doesn't work for you, that's not to say you can't do it. It's just about saying, is what's going to actually work best for me right here, right now. And I like, having that check-in about how do I feel before going to a situation, going into an event or whatever it is, and then how do I feel after, and being able to actually then have that check-in before and after on your energy levels. That really gives you a really good indication as well, of if I've got some events that might be frequently coming up, does this actually work for me, and what my energy is like. So again, depending upon a Christmas party, which one actually might suit you, because some might suit and then some may not suit. And I love that. I think I'd love to add to that again as well about the energy and also that recovery, and going even back into those quadrants. Like just looking at your four quadrants of, again, time management, and you were just saying that when we actually start to have that work and life collide, the smaller things like the health and nutrition, or also being able to, if you were exercise, like that actually gets pushed to the side. Always then look at what should be in my quadrant 2, because the quadrant 2 of that Eisenhower matrix shouldn't actually change. And it's something that, in my area, that if I'm very high energy and I can do a lot, and I may not have that 9 to 5 traditional kind of outlook to work life, but that's okay, because I will verbalize that. But there's certain things in my, I suppose, my week that is quite rigid. And that has got to do, again, around that level of exercise, because that's my grounding. And then also in the evening, like it's again around being there for my kids. And so that doesn't shift. So everything else can shift around it, but they're actually what brings me energy and what brings me the grounding. Without them, I notice a big difference. Like I can really see that difference there. So that's the non-negotiable. And I think it's just a bit of, again, it comes back to that self-awareness piece, doesn't it? Because that mindset, it's a really powerful protective factor. Tell me a little bit more about, acceptance or focusing on what you can control. And again, that level of, you talked about compassion, but even that self-compassion. How does that then enhance your energy, also your connection, and then even, the overall leadership effectiveness?
Again, I think the first thing there that I love what you were just saying, and I know you've said to me before that your kids even often say to your mum, go for a run when your energy's off, and making sure that you're prioritizing those things. But I think protecting that is often our diaries. In a way, a lot of us operate off what's in our diaries. So putting those things into our diary shows that we're prioritizing that time rather than being of the mindset of, I'll do those things when I get the time. That unless they're there, you will never have the time. So again, a lot of the time it's communicating effectively what you need to do and understanding what's serving you and what are those non-negotiables for you that create energy, because that's what enables you to turn up and perform at your best. And again, as you just spoke on there, I guess when we think about, psychological distress and burnout and a lot of those things, we know that one of the key things is that compounds all these issues is when we don't have a sense of control over things, when we lose that sense of control. So one of the most empowering things, and again, obviously it's another topic altogether, workplaces need to address the environments to make things better. But coming back to what can I do as an individual and returning back to what are the things that are within my control. And often a lot of those things is sleep, nutrition, exercise, that those fundamental pillars, as you mentioned earlier, they can either feed that stress or that sense of overwhelm, or they can help it. And one of the things that we really focus in on with groups as well is along a lot of that mindset, that mental fitness is our thoughts and our internal dialogue. And what we do to encourage people to become better at that is look to create a pause. Where in your day can you create a pause? Now, not only do we mean, actually pausing for your day, but actually thinking about 5 key things that again are evidence-based that we know that really help in overcoming that sense of chaos in a busy world. So the acronym of pause, P, stands for physiology. One of the things that we know from a physiological perspective, as you mentioned, that connection between mind and body. From a physiological perspective, one of the ways that we can shift ourselves into that rest and recovery and not that flight and fight is our breathing and our breath. So low and slow breathing. Box breathing is one of the most popular techniques where we simply breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. But again, breathing through our nose, trying to breathe deep from our abdomen as well. So thinking about our breath can switch us from that flight or fight into that rest and recovery. A is appreciation or gratitude, how we want to look at it. As I said earlier, that when we look for the positive, and there's some fantastic studies where people have journaled for 12 weeks, they've been asked to either look for the positive to just document what's happened or look for the negative. What's actually had the best impact from a well-being perspective is when we look for the positive, we end up finding more positive as well. So trying to incorporate that into our pause is a great way to do. The U, again, coming back to the body, is unsticking. So again, we all hold stress and tension in different places. Some might be in the neck, some might be in the jaw, some might be in the abdomen. So really thinking about how my body feels and almost visualizing our body releasing that stress and tension and relaxing that muscle or the stress dissipating out through our body. It's called somatic release. And again, there's great evidence to support how that can help us. S stands for see differently. So what we're doing here is reframing scenarios. So when we reframe things or cognitive reframing, there's 3 ways we can do it. We can take a reverse lens. So we can think about things from the other person's perspective and apply generous empathy to that. Why is that person reacting that way to me? Are they valid in some of the things that they might be feeling? What can I do? That again can help in that reflective piece and make situations feel more manageable. We can have a long lens. Will this matter in 10 years' time? It might feel big in the moment, but really will matter in the long run. Or we can have a wide lens and think about things. Does this really matter in the grand scheme of life? I've got my kids, I've got my health. This is not, a catastrophic event in that way. So again, using little pauses in our day. Evidence shows that as little as 2 minutes can make a difference throughout the course of the day, can really help us switch from that flight or fight, that sympathetic nervous system, into our rest and recovery, that parasympathetic nervous system, as you mentioned earlier, where all that adrenaline and cortisol, and switching between the two is how we optimize function, but also we protect the downside of poor health as well. Now, again, I'm conscious of time. I thought it might be a really great excuse for us to maybe take 2 minutes to pause now, and I walk through a bit of a guided meditation. Is that all right with you?
I'd love to see this in action, and I'm sure everyone listening would
Excellent.
too.
Perfect. So everyone tuning in, I'll just ask you to settle in, to sit comfortably, feet flat, hands resting easy. Let your spine be tall but relaxed. Close your eyes if you like, and I want you to focus on inhaling gently through your nose. Exhale longer than you inhale. Now try and inhale to the count of 4, hold to the count of 4, exhale to the count of 4, then hold to the count of 4. Repeat this pattern 3 times. Now continue breathing nice and slow and low. And now bring your mind to one thing you're grateful for today. Could be a person, a small win, or just the chance to join us in conversation to pause. Hold it lightly for a breath. On the next exhale, unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders, loosen your hands, let the body soften. Now quietly say to yourself, this is fuel, this is readiness. Feel that energy as something that supports you. Now I want you to picture one small step that you're going to take off the back of today. See yourself doing it calmly and clearly. Take one final deep inhale and a long, slow exhale. Open your eyes, notice the shift, and carry this clarity into what comes next. I just realized I didn't actually explain what E stood for as well in this context. E is for execute. So again, taking that pause to really think about what is the one next thing that you can do that's going to really impact your feeling of sensation if you're in this chaotic sense. What's one small thing that you can do? Is it that email you've been putting off? Is it canceling that meeting you don't really want to go to? Is it taking yourself for a walk? Think about what you can do that's going to really shift your whole body and your dynamic in getting that calm in the chaos.
That was just perfect. I love it. It's, that I hope everyone got something out of that. That's a micro moment, and it took 2 minutes, didn't it? And, to even get the breath regulated. And it's something that I can even feel that difference, straight up, and especially around the jaw. Like, the jaw is the largest muscle. Like, we have the most muscles in the jaw. So when we're actually clenching it, how that actually impacts the rest of the body. That was lovely, and I think that the pause and the way that you describe that is really simple to understand and then to take away. But those micro moments, just like that, can then create that micro action, and it's that commitment piece. And once we can then start to again take away and send that email, or follow up with that one person, those micro actions, what that actually even ends up doing is it starts lightening your load. And a burnout actually, which we know is it can also be such a cognitive, again, those invisible lists that we can actually have in our brain that can continually create that feeling of overload. So love it, Greg. Thank you so much. Now, I'd like to know your key takeaway from today. But if you could give advice to your December self, what would it be?
Well, again, I think my key takeaway again, and the things that you were touching on there, that by doing these actions and these activities, help us to come from a place of responding rather than reacting. That when things are busy and chaotic, we're in that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight. Mistakes can happen. We don't react to what things the way that we would like to react, whether it's at home or at work. By taking those pauses helps us to really think about managing that energy and not managing that time, and how can we actually improve outcomes for ourselves even when things feel chaotic. And I think the other key takeaway is obviously that compassion piece, is that can we get in the trenches with each other, let people have that space to talk openly, honestly, vulnerably, and then how can I support from there and let people own those solutions, I think is some of the key things that we always like to pass on as messages. My advice to myself for December, again, we all know it's always easy to give advice, it's harder to take it. I think probably one I used this morning with my son, it was probably more in a footballing context, but slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That often we think that to be productive, we've got to be doing lots really quickly. But if we can slow ourselves down and get into that responsive type of mindset, we can create better impact and more productivity.
I love it. I love that. And, I think, and a lot of listeners here is that, again, we're still coming back to that run to the end of the year. And it's always like we can still get to the end and we might still be able to protect some of that energy, and that's great. But how can we enter then the new year? So, how do we enter this with some really restored levels of energy?
Yeah, again, I think of that client, that optimism and shared responsibility, but also one of the things that we know from a burnout perspective is not necessarily from coming to try to do too much. And I think you touched on it earlier, it's from not doing enough of the things that energize us. Think about the things that energize you, do more of those. Don't be afraid to say no to the things that don't. Prioritize meaningful relationships, communicate consciously, prioritize the health, and yeah, deliberately choose those activities that fill your energy so you can start the new year on the front foot rather than feeling like you need a holiday from your holiday, or you're going to drag yourself into the new year and caught in that negative spiral.
Yeah, I love that. So really taking that time, I suppose, even to reflect, to understand what is going to serve me well this year, and how can I then start to even integrate this moment by moment, like, throughout the week. And it doesn't all have to be everything. Like we all know the New Year's resolution hacks, don't work. I think the biggest people that win out of that are gyms. But it's, I think it's more so just what can I start to actually plant in to then start to building into my habit as well. So that's also really important piece there.
Perfect. Yeah, again, I think that's something I'll just touch on it very quickly. I am conscious of time as well. But when it comes to habit formation, so when we talk about those pauses, they're only really impactful when we do them consistently. So think about what is your cue or your trigger. That's what we know in habit formation, that there's a cue or trigger, and then what is the response. So what I mean by a cue or trigger is that on your commute to and from work, is that your cue or trigger to create that pause? Is it after a busy meeting or a webinar? I know what I'm going to be doing off the back of today is taking time to report to do a pause in there. Again, I've even got stories of people I've met over the years that use every time as they go to the bathroom is the moment to do their pause in the day. My first response is always there's got to be better places to do deep breathing than a bathroom. But again, what is that cue that happens in your day to remind yourself, let's do a quick pause in this moment so that we can be responsive rather than reactive.
Yeah, absolutely. Those neural pathways do need to be strengthened. I love that. Thank you. This was absolutely fabulous. Loved, everything that you provided today to our attendees. And I think in the chat right now, we're going to get a feedback survey just about, what you actually learned from today's webinar. But the recording and resources will be emailed around. And I suppose what we can then, start now is really being able to address our fatigue and also our workload, and then the boundaries to the end of the year, and then create those opportunities for a great start of the year and that setup. And really we obviously SuperFriend work a lot with workplaces to be able to measure, their current levels of wellbeing, and then being able to take those deliberate steps forward. And we do this through our Thriving Workplace Index, and then also the Better Being program. So the links are also in the chat. But thanks so much, Greg, for today. I really appreciate our chat as normal. And thank you for joining our Wellness by the Water Cooler. And as we wrap up for the final session of the year, just wanting to thank everyone for joining us throughout our series, and really hope you've enjoyed the 2025 chats and found the insights and our conversations really useful. So keep an eye out for more exciting and evidence-based discussions next year. And also remember, if there is a topic that you'd like us to explore, or a conversation you think would be really beneficial for your workplace or your industry, please feel free to get in touch with us. So here's to ending the year well, and starting the next one restored, connected, and thriving. And we want to be able to keep building those, great workplaces as well, don't we, Greg? And the communities, that really feel safe and supported. Thanks again, everyone. Have a lovely day.
Thanks, Nat. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye.